The Heart of the Forgotten One, a cinematic paranormal love story. Prologue, The Creation. In the darkest corner of Montana, buried 300 feet beneath frozen earth, there existed a laboratory that officially never existed. No government records, no budget trails, only whispers among retired military officers who drank too much and spoke of things they shouldn't. Project Lazarus. Dr. Marcus Vale had dedicated 20 years of his life to a singular obsession: creating life where none should exist. Not cloning, not genetic modification. Something far more dangerous: synthesis. The fusion of human DNA with adaptive organisms capable of surviving in any environment. The official goal was noble: soldiers who could withstand extreme conditions, heal rapidly, adapt to any terrain. The truth was darker. After 47 failed attempts, after countless bodies burned in the facility's incinerator, Subject 48 opened its eyes on a February night in 2019. They called him the Aberrant. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall when fully grown. His muscular frame carried the strength of 10 men. His pale skin bore the scars of surgeries, injections, electrical stimulation. But his eyes, those eyes held something the scientists never anticipated: intelligence, awareness, emotion. Dr. Vale documented it all with clinical detachment. Subject 48 demonstrates unexpected cognitive development, responds to pain with what appears to be sorrow. Note, further emotional suppression required. But emotions cannot be suppressed in a being designed to survive. The creature learned quickly. He understood the hatred in their voices, the fear in their eyes, the pain in their instruments. He learned that he was called monster, mistake, abomination. And on the night of October 12, 2021, when a careless technician left a secondary containment door unlocked, Subject 48 made a choice that changed everything. He escaped. The facility went into lockdown. Armed teams scoured the mountains. Helicopters filled the sky. But the creature had vanished into the wilderness like smoke through fingers. Dr. Vale burned the files, terminated the project, and accepted early retirement. The government declared the experiment a failure. They were wrong. The experiment had only just begun. Chapter 1: The Girl in the Clearing. 4 years later, Clara Hayes had moved to Montana for one reason: to disappear. Not from the law or danger, but from a life that had slowly suffocated her. Corporate marketing in Seattle, relationships that felt transactional, friends who only existed on screens. At 32, she realized she'd spent a decade living someone else's definition of success. So she quit. She sold her condo, packed her Subaru, and drove until the roads turned to gravel, and the gravel turned to dirt. The Forest Service needed a remote wildlife camera technician. Someone willing to live alone, hike daily, and repair equipment scattered across 70 square miles of wilderness. Clara didn't hesitate. Her cabin was small but sturdy, built in the 1960s by a ranger who'd valued solitude over comfort. One bedroom, a wood stove, shelves lined with books she'd been meaning to read for years. No cell signal, no internet, just the forest, the mountains, and blessed silence. She'd been there for 4 years now, and not once had she regretted it. Every evening, weather permitting, Clara took the same walk. Down the narrow path behind her cabin, past the creek where deer came to drink, through the clearing where moonlight filtered through ancient pines. She carried an old brass lantern, not because she needed it, but because its warm glow felt like companionship. And she hummed. Old folk songs her mother taught her before the cancer took her. Songs about mountains, rivers, lost loves, and found homes. Clara's voice wasn't professionally trained, but it carried a warmth that made the forest feel less empty. It was on one of these walks, September 14th, the air unseasonably warm, that she first felt it. The sensation of being watched. Clara paused mid-step, her humming trailing off. She turned slowly, lantern raised, nothing but trees. But something felt different. The forest had gone quiet. Not the eerie silence before a storm, but something else. An attentive silence, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. "Hello?" Clara called softly. No response. She waited a moment longer, then smiled to herself. Probably a bear, or maybe that mountain lion Jim keeps warning me about. She continued walking, resuming her song. But she was wrong. It wasn't a bear. 30 meters away, hidden behind a massive pine, the creature stood absolutely still. He had been watching her for 3 weeks. Not hunting, not threatening, just watching. He didn't understand why. Instinct told him to avoid humans. They meant pain, imprisonment, death. Yet something about this woman drew him back night after night. Her voice. When she hummed those songs, something happened inside his chest. A sensation he had no name for, a warmth that spread through him like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The scientists had tested his physical responses endlessly. Pain tolerance, strength, speed. But they never tested this. They never asked if he could feel beauty. The creature's massive hands, easily capable of crushing steel, trembled slightly as he watched Clara's lantern bob down the path. His enhanced vision saw her clearly despite the darkness. The gentle way she stepped over roots, the small smile on her face, the complete absence of fear. She was different from the humans in the facility. She was peaceful. For the first time since his creation, the creature wondered if there might be a world where he wasn't hated, where he wasn't a mistake, a world where someone might see him and not scream. Chapter 2. Shadows and Songs. Week 4. Clara's morning routine was simple. Coffee, oatmeal, check the weather station, review the day's camera locations. But lately she'd noticed small irregularities. Strange tracks near her cabin, too large for deer, wrong shape for bear. Broken branches at heights she couldn't reach. And twice now, she'd found her scattered firewood neatly restacked when she was certain she'd left it messy. Getting forgetful in your old age, she muttered to herself, though she didn't quite believe it. The truth was harder to ignore during her evening walks. The forest had changed. It wasn't threatening, but it was aware. Clara had spent enough time in nature to know its rhythms. This was different. The usual wildlife sounds, birds, small mammals, insects, would fade whenever she reached the clearing. Not suddenly, but gradually, like an audience quieting before a performance. And her lantern. The flame would flicker when she felt most watched. Not from wind, the air would be completely still. Just a gentle wavering, as if something were drawing closer to the light. "I know you're there," Clara said one night, speaking to the darkness. "I don't know what you are, but you don't feel dangerous, do you?" The forest offered no answer. But from his hidden position, the creature's breath caught. She knew, not what he was, but that he existed. And she wasn't afraid. This changed everything. Week 6. The creature began testing her reactions. Small things at first. Moving an object she'd left in the clearing, a water bottle, a notebook, repositioning it somewhere obvious, watching from the shadows to see how she'd respond. Clara would pause, tilt her head, then smile slightly. "Okay, forest friend," she'd say. "I see you've been here." Then came the night he took a bigger risk. Clara was repairing a camera near the creek, a finicky model that kept losing battery connection. She'd been working for an hour, her lantern set on a flat rock beside her, completely absorbed in the delicate wiring. The creature moved closer than he ever had. 10 meters, 8, 5. His enormous frame should have made noise, snapped branches, crunched leaves. But years of survival had taught him to move like mist. He stood at the edge of the lamplight, close enough to see the concentration on her face, the small furrow in her brow, the gentle way she handled the equipment. She was beautiful, not in the way the scientists' magazines showed beauty. No artificial perfection, just real, present, alive. The creature's hand rose slightly, an unconscious gesture, reaching towards something he could never touch. Then a branch snapped, his own foot pressing too hard in his distraction. Clara's head whipped up. "Hello?" The creature froze. His heart, if that's what the pounding in his chest could be called, hammered violently. Every instinct screamed, "Run!" But he was already gone. Clara waited for an hour, hoping he'd return. He didn't. As she finally walked back to her cabin, she spoke to the empty forest. "I'll wait for you, however long it takes." From a ridge half a mile away, the creature heard every word, and something inside him cracked open. Chapter 3. The First Gifts. The next morning, Clara woke to frost on her windows and sunlight streaming through the pines. She made coffee, pulled on her boots, and opened her cabin door to check the weather. Then she stopped. On her porch, carefully placed on the wooden rail, was a flower. Not just any flower. Clara had spent 4 years studying this forest. She knew every species, every seasonal bloom. This was Aquilegia jonesii, Jones's columbine, rare, protected. It grew only in specific alpine conditions, accessible only by steep, dangerous climbs. Something had gone to extraordinary effort to bring her this flower. and it had been placed with such care, not dropped or thrown, positioned like an offering at a shrine. Clara picked it up with trembling fingers. The stem was fresh, the petals perfect, harvested within the last few hours. She looked toward the tree line, toward the shadows between the pines. "Thank you," she said clearly. "It's beautiful." Hidden in those shadows, the creature watched her face transform with joy. That warmth in his chest returned, stronger than before. She liked it. She understood it was a gift. And she didn't run. Week 8. The gifts continued. Every few days, Clara would find something new. A perfectly smooth riverstone, black as midnight, warm from being carried. 3 eagle feathers, arranged in a fan pattern. A piece of quartz crystal that caught sunlight like frozen fire. Wild berries in a woven basket made from reeds, the weaving clumsy but earnest. Clara kept every gift. She created a small shelf by her window, displaying each treasure like museum pieces. And every time she found something new, she would speak her thanks aloud, knowing somehow he could hear. She started leaving gifts in return. Nothing elaborate. She didn't want to scare him. But small things. A book she'd finished, left open to her favorite page. A piece of cornbread wrapped in cloth. A drawing she'd made of the clearing where they first almost met. The creature would study these offerings for hours, trying to decode their meanings. The book confused him, rows of strange symbols he couldn't interpret, but he kept it, pressing it between his palms because her hands had touched it. The cornbread was the first human food he'd eaten since his escape. It was sweet, warm, even though she'd left it hours ago. He ate slowly, savoring not the taste but what it represented. She was feeding him, like he mattered, like he was worth caring for. The drawing made him still. She had captured the clearing perfectly, the arrangement of trees, the way moonlight fell through branches, and in the corner, barely sketched, a large shadow among the pines. Him. She'd drawn him, not as a monster, just as present, part of the forest, belonging. That night, the creature did something he'd never done in his 4 years of freedom. He cried. Chapter 4. The Storm. October 23rd. The weather forecast called for a major storm system, the kind that rolled down from Canada and battered Montana for days. Clara spent the morning securing equipment, bringing in firewood, checking her generator. By afternoon, the sky had turned the color of bruised steel. By evening, the storm hit. Rain came first, cold, driving sheets that turned the forest floor to mud. Then wind, powerful enough to bend century-old pines. Thunder rolled across the mountains like artillery fire. Clara's power died at 8 p.m. The generator should have kicked in automatically. It didn't. "Perfect," Clara muttered, grabbing her emergency lantern. She needed to check the generator before the batteries in her backup lights died. It was housed in a small shed 50 feet from the cabin, normally an easy walk, but in this storm. She pulled on her waterproof jacket, secured her lantern, and stepped into the tempest. The wind immediately tried to rip the door from her hands. Rain pelted her face like needles. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Clara pushed forward, head down, one hand keeping the lantern steady. She didn't see the tree until it was falling. A massive pine, its roots undermined by saturated soil, toppled with a groan that cut through even the storm's roar. Clara looked up just in time to see 30 feet of wood and branches descending toward her. She couldn't move, couldn't scream, just froze. The tree never reached her. 2 enormous hands caught the trunk mid-fall, stopping thousands of pounds of wood as easily as catching a thrown ball. The impact drove the creature to one knee, but he held firm, muscles straining, rain streaming down his scarred skin. Clara stared up at him, rain and shock stealing her breath. He was massive, easily 9 feet tall, shoulders broader than any humans had right to be. His skin was pale, almost luminescent in her lantern light, and covered in surgical scars that spoke of terrible things. But his face was almost human. Strong features, prominent cheekbones, a broad jaw, and his eyes, pale blue, bright with intelligence and something else. Fear. He was afraid she'd scream. Instead, Clara found her voice. "Don't drop it yet." The creature blinked, confused. "I need to move out from under," Clara explained, forcing calm into her voice. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. She scrambled backward. The creature adjusted his grip, then carefully, so carefully, angled the tree's fall away from both of them. It crashed to the ground, shaking the earth. Silence fell, broken only by rain and distant thunder. Clara stood slowly, lantern raised, staring at her rescuer. The creature began backing away, head lowered, massive hands raised in a placating gesture. He expected her to run now, to scream, to confirm every terrible thing he'd learned about what he was. Clara took a step forward instead. "You saved my life," she said, loud enough to be heard over the storm. The creature went still. "You've been leaving me gifts, watching over me." Another step closer. "You're the one, aren't you? The forest friend I've been talking to." Slowly, painfully slowly, the creature nodded. Clara's heart hammered, but not from fear, from wonder, from the impossible realization of what she was seeing. Can you understand me? My words?" Another nod, more confident this time. "Can you speak?" The creature's mouth opened. For a moment, nothing emerged. His vocal cords had been damaged in the facility, then unused for years. But he forced sound through broken passages, pushed air past scarred tissue, and managed a single word. "Clara." She nearly dropped her lantern. Her name. He knew her name. You've heard me," she whispered. "All this time, you've been listening." The creature's voice came again, halting, each word clearly painful but determined. "I watch, I listen. You kind, you sing." Tears mixed with rain on Clara's face. This being, this impossible, massive creature who could have torn her apart without effort, spoke with the careful uncertainty of someone afraid to hope. "What's your name?" she asked gently, his head tilted, confused. "Do you have a name? Something you're called?" Understanding dawned, followed by something that might have been shame. He shook his head. "They." His voice broke. "They call. Aberrant. Subject. Mistake." Clara's heart shattered. "No," she said firmly. "Those aren't names. Those are cruelty." She took another step closer, close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to see his face. The creature trembled but didn't retreat. "May I?" Clara raised her hand slowly, giving him every chance to refuse. The creature stared at her hand, so small, so fragile, then at her face, searching for deception, finding only earnest kindness. He lowered his head slightly, allowing. Clara's palm touched his arm. His skin was warm, slick with rain, marked with scars, but undeniably alive. She felt muscle and sinew, felt the slight tremor of his nervousness, felt the pulse of blood beneath skin. "You're real," she breathed. "You're alive, and you're not a mistake." The creature's eyes closed. For years he'd survived by being nothing, a shadow, a ghost, a thing that didn't exist. But this woman, this impossible kind woman, said he was real, said he wasn't a mistake. When he opened his eyes again, they were wet with something that wasn't rain. "Storm," Clara said, suddenly practical. "You shouldn't be out in this. Neither should I. Come on." She started toward her cabin. The creature didn't move. Clara turned back, understanding. "It's okay. You don't have to come inside if you're not comfortable, but at least come to the porch, out of the rain." Hesitation. Then, slowly, the creature followed. Clara's porch was covered, 8 feet deep, with a solid roof that kept most of the weather at bay. She guided him to the far corner, the spot with the most space and shadow, and he folded himself down, trying to make himself smaller. It didn't work. He was still enormous. Clara went inside briefly, returning with towels, a blanket, and a thermos of hot soup. "I don't know if you eat human food," she admitted, "but it's vegetable soup. Nothing weird in it." The creature accepted the thermos with both hands. It looked like a toy in his grip. He sniffed cautiously, then took a tentative sip. Warmth flooded through him, not just from the soup, but from the gesture. She'd fed him again, given him shelter, treated him like a person. Clara sat on the porch steps, wrapped in her own blanket, and they listened to the storm together. After a while, she spoke. "I'm not going to ask where you came from. Not yet. I figure, if you want to tell me, you will. Right now, I just want you to know that you're safe here, with me, for as long as you need." The creature's voice was stronger this time. "Why? Why what? Why? Not afraid?" Clara considered the question seriously. "I've spent 4 years in these woods. I've met bears, mountain lions, wolves. I've learned that being big doesn't mean being bad. And I've learned that the most dangerous thing in nature isn't the predator, it's fear itself." She looked at him directly. "You could have hurt me 100 times. You never did. You left me gifts. You saved my life tonight. Those aren't the actions of something to fear." The creature absorbed this, then asked the question that had haunted him since his creation. "What am I?" "I don't know," Clara admitted, "but I know what you're not. You're not a monster. You're someone who likes flowers and smooth stones and leaves gifts for lonely women in the woods. You're someone who listens to folk songs and catches falling trees. You're someone who deserves kindness. Something in the creature's chest broke and reformed all at once. He had a word now, finally, for that warm feeling. Hope. Chapter 5. Learning to be Alive. The next morning, Clara woke to sunlight and silence. The storm had passed, leaving the forest washed clean and glittering. She stepped onto her porch, half afraid the previous night had been a fever dream. But the corner where he'd sat showed clear evidence: disturbed blankets, the empty thermos, and scratched into the wooden beam in careful, shaky letters. "Thank you." Clara traced the words with her fingers. "You're welcome," she said to the morning air. The following weeks, an unspoken agreement formed between them. The creature wouldn't enter her cabin. Not yet, perhaps not ever. Too enclosed, too much like the facility. But the porch became a meeting place. Every evening, after Clara's work was done, she'd sit on the steps with her lantern. Sometimes he'd appear immediately. Sometimes he'd take hours, approaching cautiously, still half convinced she'd change her mind about him. She never did. Clara taught him words, real words, not commands or labels. "This is beautiful," she'd say, showing him a sunset. "When something makes you feel warm inside, peaceful, happy, that's beautiful." The creature would repeat, "Beautiful," then point at her and say it again. Clara would blush and change the subject. She taught him home by describing her cabin, her feeling of safety there. The creature understood. He had a cave deep in the mountains, hidden and secure. But he didn't call it home. Home seemed to need more than just shelter. "What makes a place home?" he asked one night, his voice growing clearer with practice. "Feeling safe," Clara explained. "Feeling welcomed, like you belong there, like you can be yourself and no one will judge you." The creature looked at her porch, at the corner where he sat, at Clara herself. "This home?" Clara's eyes misted. "Yeah, for you, this can be home." He taught her things too, though he didn't realize it at first. How to read the forest's subtle languages, the warning calls of birds, the scent of approaching weather, the patterns of animal movement. How to see in minimal light, to let her eyes adjust rather than relying on lanterns. How to find the forest's hidden treasures, the caves with ancient paintings, the groves where rare mushrooms grew, the paths that only the oldest animals knew. "You love this place," Clara observed one evening as he described a valley filled with wildflowers. The creature paused, considering. "I survive here. Survive not same as love?" "No," Clara said gently. "Surviving is about not dying. Living is about finding reasons to stay alive." "What your reasons?" Clara thought about it. "Beauty, discovery, peace, knowing that tomorrow might bring something wonderful." She looked at him. "What are yours?" The creature's pale blue eyes met hers with startling intensity. "You." The word hung between them like a held breath. "You sing," he continued, voice soft. "You kind. You see me. Not monster, not mistake, see me. That, living." Clara's heart did something complicated in her chest. She'd spent her adult life protecting herself from emotions that might overwhelm her, from connections that might end in hurt. But sitting here on her porch with this impossible being who'd somehow learned to feel. "I see you," she confirmed quietly, "and I'm glad you're here." The creature's hand moved slowly, giving her time to refuse until it rested near hers. Not touching, just close, present. Clara's smaller hand closed the distance, her fingers finding his palm. His skin was warm and scarred and real. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For everything." Chapter 6. The Name. 3 months after the storm. Winter had settled over Montana with serious intent. Clara's cabin was well insulated, her wood stove efficient, her supplies adequate, but she worried about him. "Where do you go when it's this cold?" she asked one crystalline evening, both of them bundled under blankets on the porch. "Cave, deep, warm from earth." "Is it comfortable?" He shrugged, a gesture he'd learned from her. "Survive." "But not living," Clara said, echoing their earlier conversation. A small smile touched his features, another expression he'd learned. "Not living, you right." They sat quietly, watching snow fall through the trees. Then Clara said, "You need a name." The creature looked at her, confused. "Not subject or aberrant," Clara continued. "A real name, something that's yours." "You choose?" "No, that's not how it works. A name should mean something, should fit who you are." She thought for a moment. What do you feel like when you're most yourself? The creature considered this seriously. When with you, when forest quiet, when stars visible, when peace. Peace, Clara murmured. Then, what about Elias? Elias? It means the Lord is my God, but that's not why I like it. I like it because it sounds strong but gentle, like you. She hesitated, but only if you want it. It's your choice. The creature Elias tested the name silently, feeling how it shaped in his mouth. Not Subject 48, not aberrant, not mistake. Elias, a name given in kindness, a name that meant he was someone, not something. Yes, he said finally. Elias, Elias. Clara's smile could have lit the dark forest. Hello, Elias. It's nice to officially meet you. Elias repeated the phrase she'd taught him for such occasions. Nice, meet you, Clara. And for the first time in his existence, he had an identity that wasn't defined by pain. Chapter 7. The Hunter's Arrival. Late February, Clara noticed the helicopter first. She was checking a camera near the northern edge of her territory when she heard it. Low flying, moving in a grid pattern. Not Forest Service. Not the usual emergency services. This was military-grade equipment. Her stomach nodded with instinct. That evening, she mentioned it to Elias. His reaction was immediate and visceral. His entire body went rigid, pale skin somehow going paler. His breathing quickened. Elias? They come, he managed. For me. Who? His hands trembled. The facility, the scientists, they never stopped looking. Clara's blood chilled. How long have they been searching? Always. He struggled with the words. I not supposed to exist, not supposed to be free. Evidence of crimes. They need. Find me. Silence me. They can't have you, Clara said fiercely. Elias looked at her with heartbreaking resignation. You cannot stop them. I must go. Far. They find me here. They hurt you too. No. Clara. No, she repeated, standing up. We'll figure this out. You're not alone anymore, Elias. You're not running blind. We'll be smart about this. How? First, we need to know what we're dealing with. If that helicopter comes back, I'll try to get a registration number, any identifying marks. Second, you need to vary your patterns. Don't stay in the same cave. Don't visit me every night. Make yourself harder to track. Elias listened, clearly unused to having someone plan with him rather than against him. And third, Clara continued, if they do find us, we don't engage. We make sure you have an escape route. Always. You? Help me? Of course I'm helping you. Did you think I'd just let them take you? Elias's voice was barely a whisper. No one ever fight for me before. Clara took his massive hand in both of hers. Then it's about damn time someone did. The following week, the helicopter returned, and this time it brought friends. Clara spotted the vehicles from her porch, 2 black SUVs, unmarked, moving slowly up the access road. They parked a mile from her cabin. She immediately texted the Forest Service from her satellite phone, unauthorized vehicles on NF-117, requesting check. The response came within minutes. No one scheduled for your sector. Sending rangers to investigate. Stay inside. But Clara had no intention of staying inside. She grabbed her jacket, her camera, and her official Forest Service ID, then hiked toward the vehicles. Better to seem curious and official than suspicious and hiding. The men who emerged from the SUVs were not Forest Service, not rangers, not local law enforcement, private security, expensive gear, military bearing, weapons barely concealed under jackets. This is federal land, Clara called out, projecting authority she didn't entirely feel. Can I see your permits? The leader, a man in his 50s with cold gray eyes, smiled without warmth. We're conducting wildlife surveys. Really? Because I'm the wildlife technician for this sector, and I wasn't notified of any surveys. Private contract. Doesn't concern you. Clara held up her camera. Everything in this sector concerns me, and I've documented your vehicles, your faces, and the fact that you're here without proper authorization. Forest Service rangers are already en route. The man's smile vanished. You should go home, miss. Hayes, Clara Hayes. And I am home. This is my jurisdiction. She stepped forward despite her hammering heart. What are you really looking for? Wildlife. What kind? A pause. Unusual species, possibly dangerous. Clara's blood froze, but she kept her expression neutral. We don't have anything unusual up here. Bears, mountain lions, wolves, all accounted for in my reports. Our information suggests otherwise. Your information is wrong. The man studied her for a long moment. Have you seen anything out of the ordinary? Any unusual tracks? Strange occurrences? This is Montana wilderness. Everything's unusual if you're not used to it. Clara checked her phone. The Rangers will be here in about 20 minutes. You're welcome to wait and explain your presence to them. The man gestured to his team. We'll return when we have proper documentation. They loaded back into the SUVs and left. Clara waited until they were completely gone before her knees started shaking. That night, Elias appeared at her porch, looking more afraid than she'd ever seen him. I heard, he said. I saw. They close. Too close, Clara agreed. Elias, what did you do? Back at that facility, what makes you so important that they'd spend years hunting you? Elias sat heavily, his weight making the porch creak. I was supposed to be weapon, super soldier, but wrong, I think. I feel I refuse kill, so they tried, fix me, make me obedient. His hands clenched. I escaped during testing. Hurt 3 scientists, not kill, hurt, enough to run. Dr. Vale, he saw me go, could have stopped me, didn't. Why not? I think, Elias's voice dropped. I think he knew what he created, what they do, and regret, but not enough to stop it before. Clara processed this. So your evidence of illegal human experimentation, violations of about 100 laws, probably black budget funding. They can't let you exist. Yes, so I must go. Where? North, Canada. Far where they not find. Clara's heart lurched. That's hundreds of miles, through winter, alone. I survive. Surviving isn't living, she said, throwing his words back at him. You told me that. Clara, his voice broke. If I stay, they hurt you. I cannot, you. He struggled with the emotion. You are everything. You are only good thing. I cannot be reason you hurt. Clara stood up, moved to sit beside him despite the height difference. Elias, look at me. He did. I'm not a child. I'm not naive. I know the risks, and I'm choosing to stand with you. Do you understand? This is my choice. But no. Listen, I've spent my whole life playing it safe, making careful choices, avoiding risks, and you know what? I was miserable. Then I came here, met you, started actually living. I'm not giving that up. I'm not giving you up. Elias's eyes shone with tears. He was still learning how to shed. Not worth. Don't, Clara interrupted fiercely. Don't you dare say you're not worth it. You're worth everything, Elias. You're worth fighting for, and I will fight, with you, for you, however long it takes. Elias made a sound, something between a laugh and a sob. You impossible woman. Takes one to know one, Clara said, managing a smile. He reached out slowly, and she moved into his embrace, careful, gentle, but real. His arms could crush steel, but they held her like she was made of spider silk. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. We'll figure this out, Clara promised. Together. But even as she said it, she wondered if that was true. The hunters weren't going to stop, and eventually they'd find what they were looking for. Chapter 8. The Plan. Over the next week, Clara researched obsessively. She used her satellite internet, slow but functional, to dig into Project Lazarus. Most of it was scrubbed, deleted, classified. But conspiracy forums and whistleblower sites held fragments. A shutdown facility in Montana, 2021. Allegations of bioweapon development. Reports of a containment breach, officially denied. Missing scientists, sealed records, and budget lines that vanished into black holes. Clara compiled everything into an encrypted file, backed it up in 3 locations, and sent 1 copy to a journalist friend in Seattle with instructions. If anything happens to me, publish this. But information wasn't enough. They needed to make Elias untrackable. And Clara had an idea. Dangerous, possibly illegal, but it might work. There's a fire tower, she told Elias one evening, abandoned about 15 miles north. It's got old Forest Service equipment, radios, maps, weather monitors, and most importantly, it's got thermal camouflage material, used to hide heat signatures from aerial observation. Why? It there? Cold War paranoia. They thought Soviet planes might use thermal imaging. Doesn't matter. What matters is, if we can outfit your cave with that material, you'll be invisible to their helicopters. Elias processed this. You break rules, for me. I'm liberating abandoned federal property for wildlife protection purposes, Clara said with a straight face. Completely legitimate. A smile touched Elias's features, a real smile, one that crinkled his eyes. You bad liar. Shut up and help me plan this heist. 3 days later, under cover of heavy snowfall, Clara and Elias made the trek to the fire tower. It took 6 hours, Clara on snowshoes, Elias moving with surprising grace despite his size. The The tower was exactly as Clara remembered, derelict, ice-covered, door hanging off its hinges. They found the thermal material in a basement storage room, rolls of specialized fabric, moth-eaten but functional. Also, emergency supplies, old maps, and a working shortwave radio. Jackpot, Clara breathed. They spent the night in the tower, waiting for the storm to pass. Clara slept fitfully, wrapped in emergency blankets. Elias kept watch, his enhanced senses alert for any approaching danger. At one point, Clara woke to find him standing at the window, silhouetted against the snowy darkness. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. "Never sleep much. 4, 5 hours. Enough." Clara joined him at the window. "What do you think about when you're keeping watch?" A long pause. Then, before, "I think about survival, food, shelter, escape. Now I think about tomorrow, about conversations, about you." Clara leaned her head against his arm, as high as she could reach. "I think about you too, about what you must have endured, about how strong you are, about, she hesitated, then pushed forward, about how I've never felt this way before. This, connected, like I've known you my whole life even though it's only been months." Elias's hand found hers in the darkness. "Feel this too, no words for it, but feel it." They stood like that until dawn, watching snow fall across the wilderness. Back at Elias's cave, they installed the thermal camouflage. It took 2 days, but when they were finished, the cave was undetectable from above. "Now they can fly right over you and see nothing," Clara said, satisfied. But Elias looked troubled. "This protect me, but you, your cabin, they know you here. They come back." "I know, that's why I've prepared." She showed him the documentation she'd compiled, the dead man's switch she'd created. "If they try anything against me, arrest, intimidation, anything, this goes public. Every file, every document, the facility, the experiments, all of it. Clara, this make you target. I'm already a target. At least now I've got insurance." Elias pulled her close, a gesture that had become natural between them. "You, too brave for me. Not for you, with you, there's a difference." Chapter 9, The Confrontation. The hunters returned in March as the snow began its slow retreat. This time they had warrants, fabricated, Clara suspected, but official-looking. They had federal authority, and they had a mission. Clara met them at her cabin door. "Miss Hayes," the gray-eyed leader said, "we need to search your property." "On what grounds?" "Threat to public safety. A dangerous animal has been spotted in this area." "Show me proof." He handed her a folder. Inside, blurry photographs, thermal images, alleged sightings, all inconclusive, all clearly manipulated. "This could be anything," Clara said. "Bear, moose, trick of the light. Nevertheless, we have authorization." "Fine. Search. You won't find anything." Because Elias was 15 miles away, thermally invisible, completely safe. The team spent 3 hours combing her property. They found nothing, of course. Clara watched calmly, documenting everything on her camera. As they were leaving, the leader paused. "You seem very confident, Miss Hayes." "I know my job. I know this forest, and I know when someone's chasing ghosts." "Are we?" His eyes were cold. "Or are you hiding something?" Clara met his gaze steadily. "The only thing I'm hiding is my patience with people who waste my time." He studied her a moment longer, then nodded to his team. They left, but Clara knew this wasn't over. That night, Elias appeared at her porch looking shaken. "They almost found me at Old Cave before we move." He held up a tracking device, tiny, sophisticated. "They leave traps, small, scent-triggered. If I come near, it activates, signal them." "Son of a bitch," Clara breathed. "They're using your own senses against you." "Yes, I collected 4, maybe more. Clara, they not stop, never stop." Clara paced, thinking. Then, maybe we're playing this wrong. Maybe we shouldn't be hiding. "What you mean? What if we go public? Tell your story. Show the world what they did." Elias shook his head violently. "No, they kill us both, or take me, study me. I become exhibit, monster, freak. Not if we control the narrative. Not if we—" "Clara." His voice was loud, louder than she'd ever heard. "No, please. I cannot risk you. You are." He struggled with the enormity of the emotion. "You are only good thing in my life. Only light. I survived 30 years in darkness. I can do again. But I cannot survive if something happened to you." Clara's eyes filled. "Elias, please," he whispered. "Promise me, if they come, if they find me, you let me go, you stay safe." "I can't promise that." "You must." "No." She moved to him, taking his face in her hands. Because here's what you don't understand, you impossible, wonderful creature. You're not just my light, you're my life. Everything I've done, every choice I've made for the last 4 years led me here, led me to you. And I'm not losing that. I'm not losing you. Elias's tears finally fell, hot and real and human. You love me? Clara realized she'd never said the word, never voiced what had been growing in her heart for months. Yes, she said simply, I love you, Elias. All of you. Your strength, your gentleness, your impossible existence. I love you. His arms wrapped around her, and for a moment the world was just them, just this. I love you, he repeated, testing the words. Yes, this, what I feel. Love. They held each other until the stars came out, and in the distance, hunters continued their search. Chapter 10. The Sacrifice. April 14th. The trap was perfect. Clara didn't see it coming until it was too late. She was checking cameras on the western ridge, routine work, when her satellite phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Hayes? A woman's voice, professional. This is Dr. Sarah Chen from the Montana Wildlife Commission. We've received reports of an injured hiker in your sector. Can you assist? Clara's instincts screamed danger. I haven't seen anyone. Where exactly? GPS coordinates coming through now. He's apparently fallen, possible broken leg. Can't make it out on his own. The coordinates appeared. Deep forest, far from any trails. I'm on my way, Clara said, because what else could she say? But she texted Elias first. Possible trap. Stay hidden. Don't come for me. There was no injured hiker. Just the gray-eyed leader and his team waiting in a clearing. Clara stopped at the tree line, adrenaline flooding her system. Miss Hayes, thank you for coming. There's no hiker. No, he agreed. There isn't, but there is you, and I'm betting there's also your unusual friend, who seems quite protective of you. Clara's blood froze. Here's what's going to happen, the man continued, almost pleasantly. You're going to call him, bring him here, and we're going to take him back to the facility where he belongs. Go to hell. Or, he continued as if she hadn't spoken, we arrest you for obstruction, conspiracy, harboring a dangerous creature, 20 years minimum, and while you're in prison, we'll raise this entire forest to find him, every square mile. Clara's mind raced. You can't? We can, and we will. One woman, Miss Hayes, or an entire ecosystem. Your choice. Before Clara could respond, the woods exploded with movement. Elias erupted from the trees with a roar that shook the mountain. He'd ignored her message, followed her anyway, because of course he had. He placed himself between Clara and the armed men, every muscle tensed for violence. No hurt her. The men raised weapons, tranquilizer guns, taser rifles, containment foam. Elias, run! Clara screamed, but Elias didn't run. He stayed, planted like one of the ancient pines, protecting her with his body. You want me? He growled at the leader. Take me. Leave her. Promise. Leave her safe. I come. Elias, no. He looked at her, and his eyes held everything. Love, regret, acceptance. You teach me live. Teach me love. That enough. That more than I deserve. More than I hope for. His voice softened. I love you, Clara Hayes. Thank you for everything. Don't you dare. Promise, Elias demanded of the gray-eyed man. Promise she's safe. You have me. You not need her. The leader considered, then nodded. You cooperate completely, and she goes free. No. Clara lunged forward, but two agents grabbed her. You can't. I won't let you. Elias dropped to his knees, hands raised in surrender. The ultimate submission. I love you, he said again. Remember, I real, I alive, because you. They hit him with enough tranquilizers to drop a bull elephant. Elias's eyes never left Clara's face as consciousness faded. The last thing he saw was her screaming his name, fighting against her captors, tears streaming down her face. Then darkness. They let Clara go. She collapsed in the clearing, sobbing as the helicopter lifted off, carrying Elias away. The gray-eyed man paused before leaving. For what it's worth, Miss Hayes, I hope you understand we're protecting people. That thing. His name is Elias, Clara said, voice hoarse. And you're not protecting anyone. You're covering up crimes. Believe what you want, but stay away from this. Move on. Forget. He left. Clara stayed in that clearing until sunset, until her voice was raw from screaming, until she had no tears left. Then she stood up, and she made a choice. Chapter 11, The Revelation. Clara didn't forget. She didn't move on. She fought. First, she activated her insurance. Every document, every file, every piece of evidence went to journalists, congresspeople, whistleblower organizations. Within 72 hours, Project Lazarus was headline news. Illegal human experimentation exposed black-budget bioweapons program revealed Montana facility's dark secrets. The gray-eyed leader and his team were arrested. The facility's location was raided, scientists were subpoenaed, and somewhere in an underground holding cell, Elias waited. 3 weeks later, Clara testified before a congressional committee. She told them everything: Elias's intelligence, his capacity for emotion, his right to exist free. "He's not a weapon," she said into the microphone, voice steady. "He's a person, and you owe him freedom, medical care, and an apology." The committee deliberated for 6 days. Then they made a decision that changed everything. May 20th, Clara stood outside a government facility, different from the one where Elias was created, cleaner, with windows and sunlight. A door opened, and Elias walked out. He was thinner, exhausted, but alive, free. Their eyes met across 30 feet of concrete. Then Clara was running, and Elias was moving, and they collided in the middle, her small frame against his massive one, holding on like they'd never let go. "You came for me," Elias whispered, disbelieving. "Always," Clara said into his chest. "Always, always, always." They stood like that while cameras flashed, while reporters shouted questions, while the world watched this impossible reunion. Finally, Clara pulled back just enough to look up at him. "Ready to go home?" Elias's face, that scarred, beautiful face, broke into the widest smile she'd ever seen. "Yes, with you, always, home." Epilogue. The heart that chose love. 2 years later. The cabin in Montana had grown. Clara and Elias built an addition, larger rooms, higher ceilings, windows that let in the forest light, solar panels on the roof, a garden where Elias grew flowers and vegetables with surprising skill. They had visitors occasionally, researchers who wanted to help Elias understand his physiology, lawyers working on his legal personhood case. And once, Dr. Vale himself, old now, haunted, seeking forgiveness. "I'm sorry," he'd said, voice breaking, "for creating you in that place, for allowing such suffering." Elias had studied him for a long moment. Then, "You gave me life, others gave me pain, but Clara gave me love. That, the only thing that matters now." Dr. Vale left with tears in his eyes. Clara continued her work with the Forest Service. Elias helped, becoming the world's most effective wildlife monitor. Animals weren't afraid of him. They seemed to recognize something pure in his intent. Local hikers reported sightings of the Guardian, a tall figure who helped lost travelers find their way, who scared off aggressive predators, who left gifts of flowers on memorial markers. The legend grew, but Clara knew the truth. Elias wasn't a legend or a guardian or a monster. He was hers, and she was his. On quiet evenings, they'd sit on their porch, expanded now to accommodate them both, and watch the sunset through the pines. Elias would hum the folk songs Clara taught him, his voice still rough but filled with joy. "Happy?" Clara would ask, and Elias would take her hand in his massive one and say the word he'd learned means everything. Home. The end. They called him the aberrant. They called him a mistake. They called him a monster. But Clara called him by his name, and that made all the difference.